to see you.
Nice to see you too.
We'll start with a little 2-minute introduction. You can use the podium or not, it's up to you.
I'll start with the podium.
And then we've just got a couple of questions for you and keep it real informal. So,
Okay.
You want to start?
Sure. So my name is Becky Rheintgen. I was born and raised in Schaumburg, Illinois. I'm sure you've all been there. My dad was an engineer and my mom drove a school bus. Lived in Downers Grove for 16 years. We are active parishioners at St. Joseph's Church. Before children, I worked in public service in park districts for years in Glenview, Bolingbrook, Cary. To successfully manage those projects, it was important to hear concerns and help bridge gaps of communication between program participants and staff. With that experience, I continue to advocate for residents, often communicating needs and translating the language of village policies and procedures. After retiring, I missed giving back to the community and that public service. I mean, not retiring, but retiring from working in park. I applied to be on a village commission. I was on Human Services for a bit, and I'm still a part of the Community Events Commission. I also became very involved with the Grove Foundation. A lot of you may have been to our golf outing or the Passport to Dining that just happened. Then I eventually ran to be on the village council and was elected. My husband and I are also small business owners in Westmont. We own Open Electric and Generator. Signing paychecks every week makes me diligent about making sure that every expense is necessary and provides value to our business. And I take that same care when making decisions for our village. For nearly 2 decades, I've worked in public service. I've learned that serving any community requires careful decision making. There are often opposing perspectives, and it's important to hear the merits in them all. Deciding which path can best resolve issues, considering taxpayer needs, and future impacts isn't easy. When I was first elected in 2011 to serve Downers Grove as a commissioner, my job was to do the right thing, and it still is. I've had to make difficult decisions, but always because I thought carefully about them and for good reasons. It's not about politics, it's about people. With that in mind, I'll continue to do what's best for our community, making decisions in reasonable and unbiased ways. And that's why I seek re-election on April 7th and ask for your vote. Thanks.
Thank you. And as promised, we have a couple of questions.
Okay.
There's been a lot of talk during recent years regarding the consolidation of taxing bodies and the elimination of duplicative services between local governments. Please provide your thoughts on this issue and what you might do to promote your ideas if elected.
Well, I think there's certainly value in that concept. I know in the past our village has explored the idea of combining our efforts with Derry and Woodridge Fire Department, but there are some issues that wouldn't make that beneficial for our village, so we didn't move further on that. But I'm certainly open to any ideas of doing that, and I think we owe that to our taxpayers to do that.
Thank you. In his first budget address, Governor Rauner suggested a new formula for the return of tax dollars to municipalities through the Local Government Distributed Fund. It is possible that this would result in a $2.4 million annual reduction in the historic levels of funding to the village. If Governor Rauner's vision becomes a reality, how would you propose to make ends meet?
Well, our village staff has already started to put things together to address that. And it certainly makes you nervous because he talked also, I think you mentioned it, but I can't remember, that he's preventing villages from raising property taxes to overcome that. So if that's the case, that's certainly all about cutting things, but still trying to provide the services that our residents expect. So some of the plans that have been put out there right now include holding off on some major equipment purchases, not filling vacant positions that aren't essential. And what I mean by that is, like, we wouldn't understaff our fire department or our police department if it was necessary. And also the other concept that was brought up and we all decided was a good one was to put the facilities municipalities plan on hold at this time. In July, I think they expect that we'll have a little more information about what the impacts will be. Often it seems that people start off with their high proposal and maybe it'll be reduced, but I think it's best to plan for the worst and hope for the best.
In 2007 and 8, the Downers Grove Village Council passed an ethics ordinance containing, among other things, restrictions on term limits, campaign financing, and financial disclosure. How do you feel it has worked, and would you promote changes to the ordinance as it stands right now?
I think it's worked great, actually. I wouldn't propose any changes. It's interesting, you know, when you're running a campaign, you have to be careful about who you take donations from. And I think that rule just protects the taxpayers, really. We can't take donations from employees, and we can't take donations from liquor license holders, and we can't take donations from people that do business with the village. So I think it's a wonderful ordinance, and certainly it's made fundraising a little more challenging, but you know, that's okay.
Every village council faces controversial land use petitions. How would you propose to resolve the common occurrence of conflict regarding the rights of property owners and the concerns and objections of the public?
Can you repeat that again?
Sure. Every village council faces controversial land use petitions. How would you propose to resolve the common occurrence of conflict regarding the rights of property owners and the concerns and objections of the public?
Well, I know when we've just recently considered the 942 Maple project, the condos, that property was zoned what it's been zoned for years. And I think we've all learned from that experience that maybe we need to reevaluate our zoning ordinance and really look parcel by parcel and determine are they zoned appropriately, and the way they're zoned, are those the things that we truly want in those locations? They have things called overlay districts where those things could help in the situation that we came across with the 942 Maple parcel. But it's certainly, I think, all of my colleagues that are on the council now have agreed that we need to relook at the zoning ordinance and how things are zoned, just to make sure that we have things in place so that the things that we would like to happen in certain areas do.
If successful in your campaign for public office in this election, what do you anticipate will be the most challenging aspect of the next 4 years?
Well, I think the impacts that Governor Rauner outlaid in his address, that reduction in such a revenue source that we rely on as a village, that is going to be a big challenge. And I would imagine that if it doesn't happen, the cut isn't as big as it is now, I think it's going to be continually something that we're going to have to attack and address and make sure that we find alternate sources of revenue so we're not so dependent on that.
And the last question, which you can roll into any closing statements you have if you so choose. What leadership experience do you bring to the office you are running for, and what makes you more qualified than the other candidates seeking the same job?
Well, in my job as a Park District lady, I had many times where I was the leader of a group of 300 parents. I took dancers down to Hawaii. I mean, I was leading a lot of effort in that job, organizing preschoolers on a bus, all these things. I think my Park District experience really did give me leadership experience. I had to speak at public meetings, speak at parent meetings. I had to organize groups and volunteers and all sorts of things like that. As I stated in my opening comments, I think owning your own business and making decisions on a daily basis that affect the employees that work with you at your business really does give you a unique perspective. Because you're not working for someone else, you're working for yourself, and every decision that you make impacts not just you and me and my husband, but our employees. So I think that has certainly helped me. And just being involved in all of these volunteer roles throughout the community, I think has helped me in leadership. I was the secretary for Grow Foundation for many years, and once I was elected, just had to kind of scale back on some of those things. So in closing, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and that you have put on this forum for us all to explain our views, and for members of the public that maybe we don't get to meet often, they can come in here, and I just want to thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.